Good day, everybody. So now I will talk about the object of the contract and the cause of the contract. So under the Civil Code of the Philippines, a valid and binding contract requires more than just mutual consent between parties. It must also anchored on a lawful object and a valid cause. Together with consent, these three elements form the indispensable trio outlined in Article 1318, the absolute foundation of any enforceable agreement. The object of the contract, Articles 1347 to 1349. This represents the subject matter of the contract, the specific things, rights, or services. And then the cause of the contracts, Article 1350 to 1355. Now, let's go to the articles. So in Article 1347, hindi ko na siya babasahin. Under Article 1347 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, a contract object must be within the commerce of men. In paragraph 2, specifically establish a strict rule regarding future inheritance. It cannot be the object of a contract except when expressly authorized by law. So what is a future inheritance? Future inheritance refers to any property or right that a person expects to be received from the estate of a living person. So the core principle, while a person is still alive, their children or legal heirs do not yet own their estate. They only have an uh, right or unfinished or expectant. Therefore, trading, selling, or mortgaging a slice of an estate before the owner passes away is legally prohibited. So, uh, in the protection of the decedent, it prevents situations where third parties might wish for or plot the premature death of the property owner to secure their contractual claims. So, what are the exceptions? So the law provides strict exceptions. Future inheritance can be the object of a contract only when expressly provided by law. Classic examples, marriage settlements under the family code. Future spouses can make donations or agreements concerning their future property in their marriage settlements, but only within the limits set by law. Now, let's proceed to Article 1348. So these future things may be the object of a contract. So all things including future things as long as they are not outside the commerce of men and all rights which are not transmissible, meaning those that are transmissible, may also be the object of contracts. Things, rights, and all services which are not contrary to law, morals, good custom, public order, or public policy may likewise be the object of a contract. For things, rights, and services to become the object of a contract, there are, of course, specific qualifications. So the second paragraph states no contract may be entered into upon future inheritance except in cases expressly authorized by law. So in Article 1348, under the civil law, every valid contract must have an object, the subject matter of the thing, service to be delivered or performed. So Article 1348 sets a strict boundary. Impossible things or services cannot be the object of a contract. If a contract is formed with an impossible object, the contract is void and in existence from the very beginning. Impossibility under this article is classified into two main types. First is the physical impossibility, and the second is absolute impossibility. And in absolute impossibility, the act is impossible for anyone in the world to perform. Because of the law of nature, it is completely unattainable. For example, a contract obligating someone to touch the moon with their bare hands or to bring someone back from the dead. So the relative impossibility, the act is physically possible in itself, but it is impossible for the specific person obligated to do it. given their current limitation, or it is temporarily impossible due to circumstances. In Article 1349, the object of every contract must be determinate as to its kind. While the exact quantity of the object does not need to be known at the moment the contract is executed, the contract is still valid as long as it can be determined or identified later without needing a new agreement between the parties. So, at the bare minimum, the type of nature of the thing must be specified. For example, 10 sacks of Dinorado rice, a brand new SUV, or rebar steel. A contract that is completely vague about what is being exchanged is invalid. So the law allows flexibility regarding quantity. For example, a contract to buy all the mangoes harvested from this specific orchard this season is completely valid, even though the exact number of kilos is unknown at signing because the quantity is determinable based on a standard. So prohibition on indefinite objects. If the object is so nebulous that it is impossible to tell what is being bought, sold, or performed, for example, I will sell you some things for some amount. The contract fails because consent cannot be truly met on an undefined subject matter. Now let's proceed to Article 1350. So as the third essential requisite of a contract alongside consent and object, the cause or causa refers to the immediate, direct, and essential reason why a party enters into a contract. Article 1350 classifies contracts into three categories based on their cause. First is the onerous contracts. So the cause for each party is the prestation or obligation or promise of a thing or service by the other. Both sides give and receive something of value. And the second one is contract of sale. The buyer's is the delivery. The buyer's cost is the delivery of the item, while the seller's cost is the payment of the price. The remunatory contracts. So the cost is the reward, service, or benefit that is being paid for specifically for a past service or benefit already rendered without prior obligation. For example, paying a lawyer 100,000 pesos today as a reward for defense counsel services they rendered in the past. So the third one is the contracts of pure beneficence. The cause is the mere liberality, generosity, or goodwill of the benefactor, with no value consideration given in return. For example, donation, giving someone a gift or property out of pure generosity, where the recipient gives nothing back. Now let's proceed to Article 1351. So the cause versus motive. So what are the distinction of the cause? The cause is subjective and universal. It is the immediate, direct, and legal reason for the contract. In a bilateral contract like a sale, the cause is uniform for its type. For every seller, the cause is the right to demand the price. For every buyer, it is the acquisition of the thing. It is known to both parties and is required by law for the contract to exist. The motive is subjective and personal. It's the psychological driving force unique to an individual. It belongs to entirely to the internal world of the contracting party and is often unknown to the other side. Now let's proceed to Article 1352. For a contract to be valid and produce binding legal effects, its cause must meet three strict requisites. If a contract lacks any of these requirements or its clause violates them, the contract produces no effect whatsoever. So first, the cost must be present. What it means? A cost must actually exist of the exact moment the contract is entered into. So the second one is the legal consequence. If a contract states a cost but the cost is entirely missing or non-existent, known as absence of cost, the contract is void. For example, if a person executes a deed of sale transferring ownership of a property but the buyer never actually pays, nor is there any intent to pay or deliver anything in return, the contract lacks cause and is completely nullity. Second, the cost must be true. So the cost expressed in the contract must be correspond to reality. It must be real, truthful, and genuine. So under Article 1353, so now we proceed to Article 1353. In Article 1353, address situations where a contract is explicitly writes down one reason or consideration, but the stated reason turns out to be a lie or a fiction. Understanding how these articles operate requires examining its mechanics, the reason behind it, and how courts treat simulated or disguised transactions. So, when parties enter into a contract, the law requires transparency regarding the cost. If a contract is explicitly states a cost but the statement does not reflect reality, the presumption of nullity, the contract is presumed void because a simulated or non-existing cost is legally equivalent to having no cost at all. Without a true cost to sustain it, the juridical tie collapses and the contract produces no legal effect. The second half of Article 1353 provides an important safety valve. A contract with a false statement is not automatically done if the parties can prove that another cause existed behind the transaction. For the contract to survive, this hidden or alternative cause must satisfy two absolute conditions. First, it must be true. It actually happened or existed in fact. The second, it must be lawful. It does not violate law, moral good customs, public order, or public policy. So, for example, A executes a formal deed of sale stating that he sold his car to B for 100,000 pesos. In reality, B never handed him a single peso. On paper, the contract is a sale making the stated cost the payment of the purchase price entirely false. So it turns out that B had previously worked as A's legal consultant rendering 100,000 pesos worth of professional services for which she was never paid. So A used the deed of sale format as clumsy way to transfer ownership of the car to settle that unpaid debt, acting as a remunatory contract or decision in payment. Now let's proceed to Article 1354. In Article 1354 of the Civil Code of the Philippines, the law establishes a vital rule of evidence and contract law. Even if the clause is not explicitly stated in a contract, it is presumed to exist and to be lawful. So in everyday commerce, people enter into agreements, sign notes, and issue receipts without meticulously spelling out the underlying legal consideration every single time. So requiring every contract or written instrument to exhaustively define the legal cause would severely slow down business transactions. So the law assumes that people do not bind themselves to obligation without a reason. Therefore, when a written agreement is executed, the legal system gives it the benefit of the doubt, presuming that a valid lawful cause is backing it up. So, because of this article, the burden of proof is shifted. If a dispute arises, the party seeking to enforce the contract, the creditor or obligee, does not need to prove that a cause exists. The mere existence of the written contract or obligation carries the legal weight of this presumption. If the person bound by the obligation, the debtor or obligor, claims that the contract is invalid because there is no cause of that or that the cause is unlawful, the burden of proof falls entirely on them. They must present clear and convincing evidence to rebut or overturn the presumption. So, for example, Maria signs a simple promissory note stating, I promise to pay uh, Juan 10,000 pesos on December 31 without explaining why Juan is giving her the money or what she received in return. So, despite the silence regarding the cause, the promissory note is completely valid and enforceable. Juan can bring that note to court to demand payment without having to prove what Maria received. If Maria wishes to invalidate the note on the grounds of lack of cause, for example, she signed it or under extreme duress or as part of a completely not existing transaction where no loan ever took place, she must prove in the court that the cause was missing until she successfully proves otherwise. The law operates as though a valid lawful cause exists. Next is an Article 1355. So, a fundamental principle of contract law is established. So, the general rule, freedom of contract and market reality. So, what is lesion? Lesion refers to injury, damage, or the inadequacy of the price or cost received in a contract. For example, selling a multi-million peso property for a fraction of its true value. So, the law recognizes that competent adults have the autonomy to make bad bargains for business judgment or even sell their property below market value out of urgency of personal choice. As long as consent is freely given and the exchange is real, the courts will not rescue a party simply because they made a bad deal. So even if the price is grossly inadequate, the contract remains entirely valid and binding. So what is the exception? While mere inadequacy of price alone cannot void an agreement, lesion becomes legally significant when it is tied to a defect in a consent or when the law explicitly steps in to protect vulnerable parties. If the low price or bad deal was brought about by fraud, mistake, or undue influence, the contract is no longer just a bad bargain. It is voidable contract. In the example provided, selling a multi-million peso house for 100,000 peso is legally permissible if done voluntarily. But if Maria tricked or manipulated Juan into making the sale, the contract can be annulled in court. So there are specific instances where the law explicitly allows the rescission or annulment of a contract due to lesion, usually to protect individuals who cannot fully protect themselves. And that's all. Thank you for watching. Disclaimer, this is for educational purpose only. And this is my notes during when we are studying this article. And I hope I share some ideas that will help you. Thank you.